यस्त्यक्त्वा रूपमाद्यं प्रभवति जगतः अनेकधा अनुग्रहाय प्रक्षीणक्लेशराशिः विषमविषधरः अनेकवक्त्रः सुभोगी सर्वज्ञानप्रसूतिः भोजगपरिकरः प्रीतये यस्य नित्यं देवो ह्येषः स वो व्यात् सितविमलतनुः योगदो योगयुक्तः योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचाम् मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं श्रीमते अनन्ताय नागराजाय नमो नमः। पातञ्जलमहाभाष्य चरकप्रतिसंस्कृतैः मनोवाक्कायदोषाणां हर्त्रे पतये नमः। भाष्यकृत् सूत्रकृत् चापि निर्मलन्तं स्वरूपिणम् ध्यातारं श्रीपतेर्नित्यं पतञ्जलिं नमाम्यहम्। Duhkham anagatam. So today we are in a very important sutra, Heyam Duhkham Anagatam. A very fascinating sutra. It's from the second chapter, number 16. Last week when we talked about the 15th sutra, we spoke about Duhkham eva sarvam vivekinaha. Patanjali talks about the definitions of Duhkham, the origins of Duhkham, what creates Duhkham in us. And basically he says nobody is free from Duhkham. We are all, one day or the other, we are going to suffer. And how much we are going to suffer is not really in our hands. We have suffering that will be very important part of life. So this sutra is very significant. Heyam, Duhkham, Anagatam, which basically, very simply translated, it's just a rearrangement of the words in the sutra. Anagatam Duhkham Heyam. The dukkha that is not yet arrived, be prepared for it. Very fascinating sutra. We can't do anything about what is called the Bhuta Kala, the past and the present. It has manifested. You can't do anything, you cannot go back and change. But you can do something about what is called the Bhavishyat Kala, that is what is going to happen. What is going to happen in the future. So we know that in future some suffering is going to come. Prepare for it and be ready. That is what this sutra says. Anagatam Duhkham Heyam. Try to avoid, try to prevent the dukkha that is not yet arrived. It's almost like, well, winter is going to come. So start preparing yourself with wearing some warm clothes, eating some appropriate warm food, making sure that you are prepared for the winter that is going to come. It's not yet there, but it is coming. Because if you don't prepare, winter will bring you some diseases, some sicknesses. So be prepared. Same way, summer is going to come. In India soon, the season are going to change. We are now supposedly in kind of winter, spring. And very soon, in the middle of March, we'll start the summer in about a month and a half. So it's going to be very hot. So already now, it's a very good time to start preparing for what is going to come, so that when it happens, you are well prepared. That's what is the sutra in a very simple way. Prepare for the Duhkham that is not yet arrived. Anagatam Duhkham Heyam. Agatam Duhkham, what can you do about it? Duhkham that has already arrived, you can't do much about it. If you are suffering, deal with it. You cannot worry about what has happened in the past. You cannot worry about what is manifesting already now. But you can take some steps to prevent. This is a very philosophical sutra. Prevent, anticipate the Duhkham that is not yet arrived. There's another meaning also for this sutra, very fascinating meaning. When we analyze the sutras previous to the 15th sutra, Patanjali says, Kleshamulaha karmashayaha drishta adrishta janma vedaniyaha. Some of our actions that are based on kleshas, they will lead us to some consequences either immediately or later. And we discussed about this in great detail. And we said that some of our, Patanjali reminds us that some of our samskaras, our patterns and things like that, tapa, etc., are not necessarily coming from our life experiences only, but also our ancestors. We inherit what is called karma vasana. What experiences we had in our own life and what experiences our ancestors had, like our parents, our grandparents had, they leave impressions in our system. Patanjali has talked about it 2000 years ago through the concept called vasanas. Modern psychology is catching up with this concept and they call it transgenerational trauma that we inherit from our ancestors. So we have impressions which are coming from our ancestors and our life, which will lead to consequences maybe later. That means we are already a walking dukkha machine, because we have many of our ancestral karma that will create dukkham. We cannot avoid it. It will create dukkham. So what Patanjali says is, you stupid fellows, you have enough baggage you are carrying. Don't misbehave in this life and create new baggage, because then you will only add to your baggage of dukkham. So you have enough baggage from your ancestors. You have enough baggage from your childhood. Don't create more, because then you have to deal with more. Think about it. If you have one disease only, you have to deal with only one disease. If you have 1, 2, 3, 4 diseases, you have to deal with it in a challenging way. Now add to that 4 diseases. If you are not preparing yourself well for the future and misbehaving, taking some risks, you are adding to that baggage of 4 diseases, which means it will become 5 or 6. It becomes even worse. Let's say you have some kapha dominant diseases like depression, like obesity, like, for example, the what we call attachment and things like that. On top of it, when winter is coming, we already know that when kapha is dominant, these things can be activated. On top of that, you don't want to prepare yourself. You want to walk around with a small t-shirt during winter, so you are not preparing yourself. You will inherit another one which is called cold, mucus, etc., which you have to deal with. That becomes very challenging for your system. It's already difficult to deal with one dukkham. If you increase more and more opportunities for dukkham, you have to become very tired, because you have to deal with more and more suffering. That's why when you look at our world today, many of us, we have chronic fatigue, we have burnout, we have stress, which is exhausting us, we have chronic pain. All these are because we are so tired dealing with so many problems. We are not only having problems from the past, we are also creating more and more problems for our future. Because we really don't think long term, we think short term. Recently, somebody sent me one video about how much plastic is there in the oceans. We don't think about long term, we just think, oh, it's convenient, I just throw my plastic bottle somewhere. Now, this accumulates. Then it becomes more and more difficult to deal with it. That's why this sutra is saying, anticipate the dukkham that is not yet arrived and prepare, and if possible, avoid. If possible, avoid, because you have enough karma to unfold. Don't create more problems, because when more problems are arising, then you'll have to spend more energy to deal with that. This is one part of the sutra, heyam dukkham anagatam. Anagatam dukkham heyam. That is a very, very significant sutra. Very often what we do is we complain about the past dukkham. And we stay with the past dukkham. Oh, somebody hurt me when I was a child. My mother did not like me. Oh, my father beat me. Oh, my school teacher bullied me. We keep complaining. Oh, somebody, my boyfriend dumped me. He was not so good. We keep complaining about the past. We become a victim of past. Now, when we become like that, we are staying in the past. We are not really preparing for the problems that are coming in the future. Maybe you will have other problems that you will have to deal with, but we are not dealing with it. So that's why Patanjali is saying, look, you can't really complain about the past, you can't keep staying in the past, you have to look for what is going to happen in the future, what is happening now and what is happening in the future. Because as we talk now, 5 seconds later, this becomes the past. This becomes the past. We can't do anything about it. The word I say is already said. I cannot erase it. The time that has passed has already passed. We cannot erase it. The actions we do already become past tense few seconds later. So we cannot do anything about it. We have to prepare. That's why every action we do, where is it coming from? Is it coming from our hurt or is it coming from our heart? This is a question we have to ask all of us. We have to ask ourselves, where is it coming from? Is it coming from hurt, which means we are stuck with the past hurt, we are not really in the present or in anticipating what is coming in the future. When we are there, more problems will come, because often when we are in the role of a victim, we react with anger, we react with hatred, we react with dvesha and all this. This only creates more problem. Many people who are victims of many traumas, they are not healing themselves, they are reacting with anger and aggression, they want to kill somebody, they want to destroy somebody professionally, this and that. It's not going to heal their problems. It's only going to aggravate their suffering. They may have like a short-term victory if something they are expecting happens, but in the long term it is not really going to create joy or peace in their hearts. It's only going to aggravate the problems. That's why Patanjali is saying, don't worry about this, worry about the future. This sutra is a starting point of the second part of the second chapter. Every chapter, Patanjali is divided into 2 parts. Now, the first part of the second chapter concludes with the Sutra 2.15. The second part of the chapter starts with 2.16. Heyam Duhkham Anagatam. Here, Patanjali presents us a model of how we have to proceed with our Duhkham, how to deal with Duhkham. So he gives a 4-step model. Heyam, Hetu, Hanam, Upayam. Heyam is presented in this sutra. Heyam, Duhkham, Anagatam. Hetu, the cause of this dukkha, is presented in the next sutra and a little bit later. Drashtru Drishyayoho Samyogaha Heya Hetuhu. Tasya Hetuhu Avidya. He is giving us 2 sutras that tells us what is the cause of this Duhkham. The third step is the goal. Where should we go? Tadabhavat samyoga bhavo hanam tadrishehe kaivalyam. Our goal is liberation from this suffering. What is the means for liberation? Viveka khyatihi aviplava hanopayaha. The upaya, the means for liberation is viveka. So he presents a model around which all the rest of the sutras in the second chapter are fitting. He presents a beautiful model which starts with the 16th sutra, Heyam Duhkham Anagatam. And when we look at it, this sutra becomes even more profound. What he says is, when you recognize your Duhkham, don't get sad, be happy. Because that is your first clarity that you are in suffering. Because there are many people who are suffering but they don't know they are suffering. That suffering is even worse, because that will consume them without them knowing why they are being consumed. There are many people who are depressed but they don't know they are depressed. There are many people who are obese but they don't know they are obese. There are many people with diabetes, they don't know that they are diabetic. In India especially, this is very common with the poor people, because the poor people, they don't have access to go to a doctor. Medicine is not free. So they never go to the doctor, but they have all the signs and symptoms of diabetes. But they don't know that they have diabetes because nobody has verified them. Many people, they don't know they have depression. They don't know they have anxiety. So very often when we don't know that we are in suffering, we don't seek help. So Patanjali says Duhkham is an eye-opener. Duhkham is a teacher. It teaches you to start taking some steps. It's a very different way the interpretation of the sutra happens when we look at it this way as part of this model. Duhkham you cannot complain about that you are suffering. You have to open your eyes to Duhkham. Many people in my work with yoga therapy, they don't want to see their suffering. Because looking at our suffering is very difficult. Looking at our suffering is very difficult. It challenges us to look at our own suffering. Sometimes we may look at our physiological suffering, it's a bit easier. But when it has to do with some emotional and mental suffering, it is not easy. Especially people who have had trauma and rejection and things like that, bullying. If they have to go to that part to say, okay, that is a suffering I have to work with, it is not easy because it disturbs the person. People who have inherited suffering from the past. I am a hobby photographer and I like to take photographs of old people. I don't like so much to take photographs of young people. I like to take photographs of old people because there is beauty in their face. It's the portrait photographs of the old people. So I have a project of meeting very old people and taking pictures of them. So this gave me an opportunity to meet with many old people. And one lady I met in Europe was 102 years old. And I made some pictures of her. Now she was the grandmother of one of my students. And when he took me to meet her, his grandmother, he told me, oh no, my grandmother is a survivor of the war, in the World War. But she never talks about it. She never speaks about it the whole life. Now, of course, it is very difficult because she survived very difficult time and there would have been very traumatic impressions. And she is not alone. Many other people are there who don't want to talk about such a time. But if we don't talk about it, if we don't deal with it, forget about talking about it, if we don't deal with it, that suffering still remains. That suffering still remains. That's why Patanjali says, when you are really in Duhkham, don't complain, look at it positively. Look at it positively. When I think about it, I am often reminded of my ancestor, Sri Vedanta Desika, after whom my father was named. Vedanta Desika was a very successful person in terms of the spiritual path. He was very knowledgeable, very great poet. He had so many titles for his work. But he was a very simple, humble man. And of course, when you are successful, people are jealous. They want to try and hurt you. They want to try and bring you down. So, Vedanta Desika, when he would walk in the street sometimes, some people would throw their slippers at him, their slippers or shoes at him, to insult him. Okay. Now, this is a Duhkham. Somebody is throwing stones, shoes at you, it's a Duhkham. But Desika was so, fascinating in his response to it. Because in our Vedic tradition, the paduka, the sandals, represents the feet of God. That's why we are honoring the sandals of our teacher. When you look at that photograph we have of my father, he is having the sandals of his teacher on his head. This is the way to honor our teacher and our teachings. So, when Desika was hit with a slipper, he immediately composed a poem to thank these people who throw the slippers, saying, thank you for reminding me that my path is dedicated to serving the feet of God. Now, this is a way that you convert that Duhkham into something positive. Duhkham is a teacher. Why are these people throwing? Oh, because they want to remind me that I have to dedicate myself to this path. And that's an inspiring way to look at it. Sometimes I'm also myself reminding myself of the story of Deshika, because many people also try and attack me in recent times. And every time when these things happen, I'm often reminding myself, okay, this is a reminder from these people. I have to actually thank them for reinforcing my commitment to my teachings. And that way, Duhkham becomes not a Duhkham anymore. When you take a suffering as a teacher and say, okay, I have to look at why I am suffering now and somehow change the energy, there is something which is positive. That's why in yoga philosophy they say no object, no person is actually sukham or dukkham in an objective manner. It is only subjective, how you relate with it. That's why the next sutra, Drashtra Drishyayoho Samyogo Hetu, will come to that soon. Sambandha Dukkham, this is called Sambandha Dukkham. Dukkham because of relationship. You see this, when you are in a relationship with a person, you may feel happy if you like that person. Now, somehow something happens, the relationship changes, you break up, you separate. Now, the person is the same person, but that person is not anymore a person who is giving you sukham, they are giving you dukkham. And sometimes the reverse may happen. You may not like somebody, so that person is apparently giving you dukkham, but it can change, you become friends, it becomes sukham. Both ways it's possible. So an object or a person is not in an objective way dukkham or sukham. You have a new phone, makes you so happy until the next phone arrives. Then you are not happy with the same phone. You want to throw it and get the new phone. You want to wait in line early in the morning, 4 o'clock, in front of the phone store so that you are the first to get it. But within 1 year, the same phone becomes an object of dukkham. Oh, it's not working, it's very slow. And now there are rumors that some companies are making the phone slower just to make you buy new phones. So the same phone that gave you so much sukham is now giving you dukkham. That is what is called sambandhatya dukkham. The relationship is what makes something sukham or something dukkham. It is not actually the object itself. It's not the object itself. No object exists in this world that is giving dukkham or sukham for everybody at all times. It's not like that. Like I have a student and she is allergic to garlic. So garlic is her enemy, giving her dukkham. But poor garlic is so liked by other people. So it is not a source of dukkham for everybody. And what is very fascinating, when this lady started practicing, somehow her metabolism changed and she was no more allergic to garlic. So that which was giving her dukkham is now giving her sukham. What changed? Garlic did not change. She did not change fully, she changed a little bit, but relationship changed. The metabolism could now relate with the garlic. Before it could not relate with the garlic. So that's why Patanjali is saying here, when dukkham happens, accept it, open your eyes and see what can you learn from it. It's very easy to blame other people, saying they caused our problem, they caused our suffering, they caused this, they caused that. But it's not necessarily the reality, because we have a responsibility as well. This is of course except in the case of children, where children are dependent. Sometimes they cannot free themselves from situations where another person is causing them suffering. But as an adult, if we are in a relationship, whether it is with a partner, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a colleague at work, or whether it is with our family members, if we have an experience of suffering, we have the choice whether to continue it or not. We can always take the step to change. And we always have to look at what is it that is inside us that is creating this Duhkham. Is it actually the other person, or is it because we are allowing the other person to control us that makes this Duhkham? Sambandha, the relationship. Sambandha, the relationship. There are many people who are in India, they say, oh, my mother is creating so many problems for me, my mother-in-law is creating so many problems for me. It's their choice to be with them or not. They can always move away. They're adults. Some people say, oh, my job, my boss is creating a problem, my boss is creating a problem. It's their choice to change a job or stay in the job. More importantly, even if they stay in the job, they can always communicate to the boss that this is not right, this is right, this is not right, and change it. So that's what Patanjali is saying, that all Duhkham is not dependent on what is outside. Partially it is dependent on what is outside, but partially it is also dependent on how we respond to it. See, an earthquake happens, you lose your leg and you have a Duhkham, you cannot blame yourself. An earthquake is unexpected, it happens, you don't really suffer, you can't anticipate it. But suppose somebody had warned you of an earthquake, but you just go there, I don't care what the news is saying, I will go there. Then you suffer, then you are responsible, because you have been warned. But suppose something happens unexpectedly, like a few years ago, I was just talking about this morning. A few years ago, Chennai had a huge flooding. A flooding that happened that killed and hurt so many people. Now we cannot blame them, because especially this flooding happened at night time when many people were asleep. So we cannot really blame them for choosing to be in that Chennai when they were suffering, when this flooding happened. But suppose somebody had warned them, hey, the flooding is going to happen, you must evacuate from this area and that, and they say no, then you are responsible for that. So it's very tricky. It's very tricky. And so that's why Patanjali says, look at Duhkham as a teacher. Why you are suffering is usually because there is something from the past that is making you suffer now. And that's why in the future, when such opportunities will arise, be well prepared. Let us say you are a person who suffered from some kind of a trauma because you could not express your voice. Then you learn from that as a teacher, I could not express my feelings. So the next time when such an opportunity comes, express your voice so that you don't suffer. That is heyam dukkham anagatam. Next time somebody tries to dominate you without allowing you to speak, you don't have to choose that. You say, I don't want to choose this, I have to express my voice. That is your learning. Not to complain, he didn't let me speak, he didn't let me speak, he didn't let me speak, or she didn't let me speak. Who has to allow you to speak? Yourself. So you have to empower that. That's where yoga is about, empowerment. You have to empower yourself to learn from the Duhkham you have, because Duhkham can give you great gift. In astrological terms, we can also speak. Sometimes we go through a time in the astrological chart that is called the dominance of Saturn, Shani. And Saturn, once he catches you, he is very slow to leave you. Saturn is called Manda, slow. The mantra for Saturn also says that Kakadvajaya vidmahe khadgahastaya dhimahi tanno manda prachodayat. Manda means a slow one. So Saturn does not leave you. You suffer and suffer. People go through amazing suffering. I've been through that in my own life. But in the astrological term, they are also telling you, okay, Saturn makes you suffer, but Saturn is a teacher. As he is leaving, he will teach you, and a lot of good things will come if you learn from that suffering. So we can always blame, oh, my Saturn is not good, my Saturn is not good, my Saturn is not good. But what are you learning from that complaint that Saturn is not good? Same way, we can always continue to blame people who have hurt us in the past. My mother hurt me, my mother hurt me, my father hurt me, my husband hurt me, my child hurt me. We can continue to blame. Like many people now in Hollywood blame Germany for everything because of the war. You see all the James Bond movies, the bad person is usually German person, sometimes Russian, but mostly it's German. We blame poor Germany. Now, even though Germany is saving Europe, we want Germany is the bad guy because we want to continue to be with the past, not in the present, not in the future. So, what yoga teaching is saying, it's not what I am saying, what yoga is saying, Patanjali is saying is, use the opportunity of suffering as a teacher, then you are completely liberating yourself from that suffering. Somebody says some bad thing about you, it doesn't become the truth. Anybody can say anything about you. No, I give a simple example to my student. I show the phone and I ask her, what is this? She says, it's a phone. Now suppose I say this is a car. Does it become a car? Doesn't become a car. Suppose I say this is an apple. Does it become an apple? No, it's just a phone. The same way, some people can say bad things about you. You can't do this, you are not fit for this, you are not good, you are ugly, you are bad, you are this. It doesn't define who you are. Now, as long as you allow them to say and allow them to influence this, you are not liberating yourself, you are not treating the Duhkham as a teacher. So if somebody says that if you suffer from it, then you are allowing them to control you. Whereas if you liberate yourself from that and not worry about that, not let that inhibit your potential, your life, you have learned to empower yourself and become who you are. That is what Patanjali wants us to do here. Even suffering, don't keep suffering when you are suffering. Open a bottle of champagne and celebrate because you have opened your eyes that you have to deal with something. So celebrate that, okay, at least I have learned something. That's why in the later part of the second chapter, don't open a bottle of champagne, it's only a joke. Don't take it literally. Drink coffee or tea, it's better. But in Europe, you are drinking champagne during celebration. So, Patanjali later in the chapter, he says, Tasya saptadha pranta bhumihi prajna. There are 7 layers of clarity. 7 layers of clarity. The first clarity, remember the first clarity, prajna, is you are suffering. If you are not recognizing that you are suffering, you are in darkness. So even the fact that you are recognizing your suffering makes you more enlightened than somebody who is not recognizing their suffering. And that's what Patanjali is trying to say here. Recognize that you are in a state of suffering. That is a learning. Okay, I am suffering. That is a learning. But don't stay there. He is giving you next 6 steps. Move on. Find out the cause of suffering. Find out your goal. Take the steps, etc., etc. He is giving us the steps on how to go forward. Many of us, we are unaware of our Duhkham. And when we are aware of our Duhkham, we get stuck with that Duhkham. We get stuck with the Duhkham. I know so many people where people told these patients, doctors told these patients they will not live very long. Great example is Stephen Hawking, a very international example, so that everybody will know. I can give many more local examples, but international example, Stephen Hawking, they gave this person, poor guy, because of his muscular illness, only a couple of years to live. But that did not define who he was. He was focused on his dharma, and found his way to empower himself to fulfill his dharma. That is learning from Duhkham. What can I do with my limitation? Now, he has a particular limitation in the muscular system of his body. We may have other limitations in other systems of our body. We may have psychological limitation, we may have physiological limitations, we may have emotional limitations. So, we are all handicapped one way or the other. That's what Patanjali reminds us in the previous sutra. Duhkham eva sarvam vivekinaha. Even the persons who are vivekis, that means people who have enlightenment, very great clarity, they are not free from Duhkham. So in one way we are all suffering. But what we must do with that suffering? Learn from it. Empower yourself and learn from that suffering, rather than complain about the suffering or avoid looking at the suffering. Many of us, we have a lot of problems that we have faced that we don't want to see, and therefore comes other problems, non-specific illnesses, non-specific illnesses where we don't know what is causing us these problems. I can share an example of a student of mine whose permission I have to share the example. And this person was somebody who came to me late in her life, in the late 50s, early 60s. She has been a student of mine, and for the whole life she had, majority of her life she had depression, as well as form of fatigue, burnout fatigue, where she had very less energy. And for a whole life she was working in a very boring government job as an accountant. And when she retired from it, she came to yoga. And when she started practicing yoga, slowly she started to become more sensitive, and she would have dreams and she would recall memories which she had suppressed for a long time. And she found out that she had been through some form of sexual abuse when she was a young child. She wanted to be a dancer when she was young, but somehow her dance teacher had sexually abused her, and therefore the parents did not send her to dance. They somehow took her away. But she also, in order to forget the trauma or the suffering for her whole life, she, what we call, repressed this memory. So no wonder there was a lot of depression and fatigue and other things which was not really explained. She went through medication, she went through psychotherapy and all that. And many of these doctors and therapists, they were never able to look at what is the origins of these problems. So she was under a lot of medication, but nothing helped her. So somehow, when she came face to face with this problem and she had to deal with it, she had to learn to forgive herself for not looking at it earlier because she felt really guilty about it. Then she had to learn to heal the traumatic incidents. And that was a very beautiful process that she went through, and she slowly started becoming more and more energetic and slowly started dancing at that age. We can always heal from our wounds as long as we take the steps. That's what Patanjali says. We can heal ourselves as long as we take the steps. Whereas if this person had continued to blame that person all her life, even after realizing this Duhkham, she would not do what she's doing. She would have been a very angry person for the rest of her life. That would have aggravated the pitta even more. That would create a lot of other problems. But rather she learned to heal with it and become more in contact with her true nature, which was to use her body in movement. That was her youth dream and youth potential. So that's why Patanjali says, as long as you don't look at your suffering, you are not helping yourself. So that's why the first clarity, the first step in healing is to look at our suffering and say, okay, we are suffering, we have to acknowledge it, we have to respect it, but not stay with that. Take the next step saying, why am I suffering? And very often we have to ask ourselves the question, why are we suffering for something that happened so long ago? What have we not done to heal that? See, when a scar happens, we are applying some wound, medication, it will heal. But if you don't apply it, it becomes worse and worse and becomes big, and it affects the whole system. The same with emotional and psychological scars as well. We all have some form of trauma or the other. I have not met one person today in this world who has not suffered from a traumatic incident in their life. I am still to meet somebody. Even people say I have no trauma, they are not really acknowledging their trauma. There is no person in this world I have met who have not had a traumatic situation. And that is what Patanjali is telling us, that suffering is for everybody. And suffering does not depend on what you have or what you don't have. You can have everything and still suffer. Like the great Buddha. Buddha was a prince, he was going to be the king. He had no lacking of luxury. He could have all the products he wanted. He had a very good wife, he had children, he had good people with whom he could interact, but still he was unhappy. There was something missing. So material things are not going to give us happiness. Money is not going to give us happiness. Money can buy us products, but that product is not going to make us happy. It's a relationship. That's why sometimes we have to ask ourselves the question, what is the origin of Duhkham? And that is what Patanjali will explain in the next sutra, Samyogaha, Hetuhu, Samyoga, the relationship, Sambandha. The relationship is the source of Duhkham. And the same way, the relationship is the source of liberation. We will see this in the next class. And that's why my father always used to say, yoga is relationship. It's very simple. What you relate with determines whether you suffer or whether you are free, liberated. It's not the product itself, it's the relationship and how you relate with something. That is something that we will see in the next class. But generally, this sutra is a milestone sutra in the second chapter, which means it is the turning point of the second chapter where Patanjali starts to unfold the path for us to become free from suffering.